Today was one of those days where I actually did a lot, like a lot. And somehow I still feel like I'm catching my breath. So we're going to talk about that. A little bit of real life today, a little bit of what's been going on this past week in my kitchen, which has basically turned into my own version of Chopped. And then I want to talk a little about this upcoming cruise because I started looking into some of these places and I didn't realize how interesting they actually are. And if you're new here, this is just real life. I'd love to welcome you aboard to the fun parts, the messy parts, and what they're trying to teach me. Welcome back to Living on the Verge. I hope you guys had a great week. I am so glad to be back with you guys. I took a little bit of a beat to kind of just unwind, and I am so happy I did. I really kind of just took a moment, and after the preparations and the big Easter celebration, which if you're listening regularly, you know was an amazing, amazing day in the life, I just needed a break. I needed a moment. But I sat down yesterday and I planned my week, took a look at the week ahead, and I realized that this was a perfect opportunity for me to get up and have sort of a reset. So today I started with that. I kind of got up and I had this up and atom mentality like, okay, we're getting back on track. Yesterday, I wrote very few things on my list of things to do. 1, go to the gym, non-negotiable. Even if I just walked in, my goal was to get to the gym. 2, see my mom. She had kind of a rough week last week, and I really wanted to make sure that after giving her a little bit of time to rest, that I follow up and I see her and I checked on her, and that was a part of the big plan. And number 3 was to get this pesky office work that had been hanging over my head done. I finally finished all the tax stuff, but there was one little thing that I kept forgetting to do, and I would only remember it like Saturday night at 10 p.m. when there was no way that it was actually going to get addressed. So that was all that was on my list. And I went to bed with not so much a sense of resolve, but a sense of just don't get up and think about it, just go. And so that's what I did. I jumped up out of bed this morning. Well, I didn't jump. I got out of bed this morning and I did my normal routine, only this time, instead of schlepping down the stairs in my robe and my slippers to make my cup of coffee, I instead got dressed in my gym clothes before I even went downstairs. And just that little tiny intentional act kind of changed the trajectory. I put my shoes on. I had my jacket on. It's a little rainy here in Southern California this morning for me. So I got up kind of knowing, gosh, I think this might be Mother Nature messing with you, because it's hard enough for you to get back to the gym these days, but it's going to rain today too. It was kind of a, okay, I see where we're at moment, but it didn't deter me. I was honestly really gung-ho and almost excited about being able to go back. I regularly went to the gym 3 days a week without even thinking about it. And I walked on the days in between, sometimes in addition to. And so I had a really regular health and wellness routine in place. If you're a longtime listener, you know that. And last year I had surgery toward the end of the year, and it kept me from being able to work out until after the first of the year. And as a result, my routine just kind of went awry, and it's been really difficult to get back into some momentum and some, just routine. So I thought what I need to do is just make sure I get to the gym, and that's going to set the pace for the day. Well, I was right about that. I got up, I went to the gym, I walked in. I didn't have a big plan, but I knew that my goal was to put in some serious work in a short amount of time. I want to make it manageable for myself so that on days when I have things to do in my everyday life, it's not a reason for me to have an excuse. Oh, well, I can't spare an hour and a half of my life or whatever. And so my goal was to get there and make it manageable and just get through whatever. I had no plan. I just knew my plan was to get to the gym. And as usual, and is the case for most of us, once I got there, I was happy to put in a full workout and put in the time. And honestly, my muscles were thanking me. They were like, "Where have you been, girl? Welcome back." So what did I do? I went in, I did 5 minutes on the treadmill at a pretty fast pace just to get my heart rate going. And then I went down to the machines. I had been doing a lot of free weight work lately, but I thought, I'm afraid that my form might be a little bit rusty or what have you. So I'm going to use the machines today. And I have 3 machines I really love. They're all ab machines. I did sets of those. One of the things that I tried not to do was go back and weigh. So if I was at 50 pounds when I stopped working out, then I'd start my machine at 50 pounds today. And my plan was if it's too heavy, I'll lighten the weight. But good news, nothing was too heavy. I didn't have to adjust down. I did notice that by my 4th set, I was getting a little more winded. Well, it had been a couple of weeks since I'd been at the gym, and so that's to be expected. But after the abs, I actually went and did some leg work and some hip work, and then I just did a little stretch, and I got the heck out of there. And I had a much springier spring in my step, and I headed next door to Barron's to get the veggies and the fruit that I needed for the week. And I had the idea that I would get one of the hot soups that they have at Barron's and take it to my mom so I could check on her. I mentioned a little earlier, my mom had a rough week last week and spent some time in the emergency room. Thankfully, everything's okay. But for those of you who know and understand Alzheimer's and its progression, mom had a UTI, and Alzheimer's and UTIs they don't go well together. So suffice to say, it was a really rough week for my mom and for my sister. And I just wanted to check in and make sure everything was okay. So I took her some chicken noodle soup and a triple chocolate brownie, which would make her happy and put a smile on her face. And she's doing okay. She's tired. She's slow. It looks like the UTI kind of took it out of her a little bit. And, from time to time, you can see the mortality. It's just not easy. It's not an easy disease to watch. And I'm not going to get into a big soliloquy about it. Suffice to say, she was happy to see me, and I was happy to just give her a big hug. And I'm so grateful that she still knows just how much I love her. And it was good. Yeah. And so after I saw mom, I thought, this is really cool. I am having one of those days where, everything is kind of feeling like a win. And I felt a little bit grounded after seeing my mom. So back home I came, and I got that silly little, pesky little, annoying little nuisance of a thing that I had been forgetting to do. I finally got it done. And so check, that's off the list. And honestly, here's the funny part of this whole conversation so far. Inasmuch as I have not even taken a breath in recounting it, and when I recount it, it sounds like, gosh, you got a lot done. For some reason, internally, I still feel like I'm catching up, or like there's more to do, or like I should keep going. And I have to remind myself that it's okay to take a little moment to enjoy the wins. I've talked about that before on this podcast. Sometimes we just get so caught up in the round and round and the day to day that we don't take a moment to enjoy the wins. I got a lot done this morning. I went back to the gym. I got some gorgeous vegetables. I'm going to be having a great week. I set myself up for success, and that was all by 10 a.m. That's a win. And yet, as soon as I got done with the office work, my mind immediately went to, what haven't you done and what do you need to get done? And I consciously and thankfully was able to stop myself and just say, you know what? You did a lot. Whatever gets done from here on in is kind of gravy. And also, if nothing else gets done, it's still been a win of a day. And here I am talking with you guys, so guess I'm still doing stuff. Anyway, I'm going to move on now, because one of the other things that kind of just showed itself in my life this week was that I had a lot of food. I had a lot of frozen protein. I had a lot of pantry items. I had a lot of vegetables and some fruit that was, sitting in the refrigerator, still good, just with no real plans for them. And I normally am pretty good about making the list and doing the menu and going to the grocery store. But you may recall that last week was somewhat of a off week for me, so I didn't do all of that. And I realized, probably about halfway through the week, you don't really have any cohesive dinners or lunches for that matter. And so it was okay because I spent a lot of time out at lunch, but dinner time, I wanted to cook home. I mean, it gets expensive. So I decided I'm just going to use whatever I have and I'm going to make it work. I'm not going to the market. It's already Tuesday night or whatever day it was. I think we normally do our shopping on Saturday and Sunday. So for me, I was like, oh, this one's a goner. And so I basically started playing my own version of Chopped. Like, what do I already have? What can I turn it into? How do I not waste anything? And honestly, it started to become somewhat of a game as the week went on, and I kind of liked it. I made some really interesting things, and last night's dinner, the same thing happened. We were going to make soup. I was going to make albóndigas, but we were just tired, and neither my husband nor I wanted to go out to the grocery store. And I told him, I really do have something here that I can put together with the ground beef instead of making albóndiga soup, which is Mexican meatball soup. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, I'll figure something out. I've been doing it all week. And he kind of laughed and said, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And he laid down and took a nap, which was really nice to see. And after our Saturday, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a minute. But anyway, dinner ended up becoming exactly that. What the heck do I have in my kitchen and how can I use it? I used the ground beef. I seasoned it. I sectioned it off into kind of hamburger style looking steaks with some grated onion and some, herbs and seasonings. And then I just seared them and took them out of the pan to rest. And then I used a mandolin and I took an entire onion and a half and I thinly sliced it and I put it in that same the same drippings from the meat, and I slow cooked them, and I ended up with kind of like a Salisbury steak situation. I added some Worcestershire sauce and some garlic, and before you know it, I had this beautiful little gravy that I used to serve over the patties. And I didn't really know what I was going to use as a side, but there were 4 little lonely carrots sitting in the fridge. And I said, these guys deserve a home. I'm just being silly. I peeled the carrots. I sliced them down. So I had long half carrots, and I sauteed them. I mixed them with some olive oil and some salt and pepper. And I threw them on a sheet pan in the oven for about 15-20 minutes. And while I was doing that, I noticed I had some beautiful Roma tomatoes. And so I split those in half, north and south, same thing, olive oil, salt, pepper. For this, I used a little bit of balsamic vinegar, not glaze, vinegar, just a couple of drops. And I threw those into the broiler for like 6 minutes, and they got all crispy and crunchy and yummy, and then just perfect to go with the beef steak. And that was really it. I threw together some cauliflower rice in a little mound, and I served the dinner just as is, and it was so good. And bonus, you guys, virtually no carbs. In fact, I'm trying to figure out where the carbs would be, if any, and it was delicious. So here's the fun part. Today, I got back from the gym and I was hungry and I want to do protein forward food. So I had 1 hamburger patty left over and I had all those onions in the gravy. And I thought, this looks almost like French onion soup. I don't think my stomach will know the difference. So I got beef broth and I mixed it all in with the leftover onion gravy that I had. I added some thyme. I added some garlic powder and a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, and I let it come back to a low boil. And then I threw it in a bowl and I threw a piece of cheese, like literally only had sandwich cheese. I think it was like hot pepper jack. And I just threw the slice of cheese in the hot bowl of soup. And I had the best imitation French onion soup along with the little spinach salad and the ground beef patty on the side. It was such a good lunch. And I was really feeling like, okay, now I am really getting fancy with my chop work. But all of that to say, it's really kind of fun taking things that you have and either repurposing them without overcomplicating them, and or taking things that are there and making something fantastic but unusual from scratch just because that's what's there. It honestly kind of feels like a little bit of a life theme right now. And I told you Saturday was actually really fun. What a great day. So we had stuff around the house to do. You know, it's springtime. There's always the things in the garage and a little bit of yard work and what have you. But we were bound and determined to get out and have some fun. And so we got dressed and we headed to sushi with our friends. And we had a fantastic sushi lunch. We just sat there and we drank sake and we laughed. And we had some really good specials. And I think I'm going to reach out to the sushi place and see if I can't feature them and maybe even interview the owner, because I think that it might be good for him and for you guys. They have some really good specials, especially for the spring and summer if you're in the Temecula area, or even Murrieta, or even Lake Elsinore, Canyon Hills, Canyon Lake. Anyhow, great sushi lunch. And then we went over to one of the wineries that I've talked about here on the podcast before, Marshall Stewart. And we have, we're members there, so we have a couple of free glasses of wine. So we, showed up and I had a Malbec, which was really yummy. But, My husband ended up buying a bottle of their bourbon barrels in because honestly, it's so delicious. And he was sharing with a friend. And so I, had already had a little bit of sake, and I'm not going to go hard on the red wine because I happen to know that we still have a few stops left on our trip this Saturday. Excuse me. And so I wanted to make sure that I saved room and I could remember my name. I'm just being silly. Anyway, we ended up leaving there and heading over to a distillery, and there aren't many of them, so I'll let you do the logical deduction because I'm not going to really have a great thing to say. So rather than review them, which I don't think is fair, I didn't have a fair opportunity or experience there, I'm going to just hold off on that. All of that to say, one of my friends had a smoked old fashioned. Another one had an espresso martini, and I had a cucumber martini. All three of the drinks were fine. But I'm going to go back there and we're going to go from scratch on that experience rather than speak on the experience that I had there this Saturday. And then we decided, we were going to go have Thai food for dinner. But everybody was feeling a little bit festive and happy. And yes, we did have a DD. And oh, by the way, we were having so much fun. I have not laughed that hard and that much in a long time. And it was mutual. So where did we end up? You guessed it, Bolero for dinner. If you're wondering, the spring menu is not yet fully released. But I would say don't ask on a Saturday. But you could probably get a couple of the items off of the spring menu if you show up and chef is there and it happens to be slow. I asked around a little and I'm not sure when they're releasing the full spring menu, but I didn't care. We ordered some different offerings. Maybe it was because we were just in a different mood. Of course, we stopped and got our glass of wine. And of course, we did a little bit of shopping in the little boutique they have there. But once we got seated, we ordered the octopus, we ordered the chicharron, we ordered the lamb chops, and we ordered the seafood linguine. All four were delicious. I was lucky enough to have at least a bite of each, and it was just another lovely dinner and another lovely day. Honestly, such a good time. The food was delicious. And I have a takeaway from Bolero that I didn't think. I thought I knew everything there was to know. I thought I had tried everything I wanted to try. The octopus at Bolero is delicious. And I don't particularly like octopus. But this was tasty. It was not chewy. It had a lovely kind of char grilled flavor. And it was served with like tomatoes and some other little veggie goody kind of warm salad looking thing. So that was Saturday night. It wasn't supposed to go until 10:30, but it did. And I have absolutely no regrets. It was really fun. And I think that I needed that reminder that not everything has to be productive in order to count. And so yesterday, as I'm sitting on the couch being completely and totally unproductive, I started looking into this cruise that I have coming up. And I'll be honest, I didn't expect to get this interested in the actual ports. Like St. Kitts, there's this place, Brimstone Hill Fortress, and it is an UNESCO World Heritage Site built by enslaved Africans. And it has these massive ramparts and views over the Caribbean. So that piqued a little interest. And it's one of those places where you realize maybe I'm not just visiting somewhere pretty, but maybe I'm walking through real history. And then there's Grand Turk, which has this mix of beautiful beaches, but also this rich history surrounding none other than the salt industry. And then Antigua. which I didn't realize had all of these historical sites. But I'm most excited about St. John's Cathedral with the white towers. And I think what I'm starting to realize is these trips, they're not just about getting away, but they're becoming about stepping into something completely different, even if it's just for a day. And that's the beauty of it, right? The history, the richness, the pride that they take in their homeland. So you guys, I'm getting more and more excited, but if you've been to any of these places, St. Kitts, Grand Turk, Antigua, any of the Caribbean islands, or if there's out there something that, that I need to not miss, please DM me or email me. I'd really love the recommendations. And I've also been thinking about something else. I may be doing a little series coming up next month. There's nothing formal yet, but it's really been on my mind. And I really think it would be pretty great to get some real conversations going from really powerful viewpoints. And so that's basically where I'm at with that for now. And I just thought I would share that with you. And then also just a reminder, I intend to be back on Friday with Winos on the Verge. And I just want to say, if you're new here, I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for spending the time. Until next time, I'll be here, living on the verge.